Hello, welcome to the Virtual Hammer Museum. I'm Claudia Bester, and I'm the Director of Hammer Public Programs, and I'm very pleased to welcome you all to tonight's reading by the writers of the PEN America Emerging Voices Fellowship. It's at the core of the mission of the Hammer Museum to support emerging artists, and I'm proud that we have a small opportunity tonight to celebrate the work of these talented writers at the culmination of this intensive year-long program. Tonight we'll hear new work from 5 incredible writers, each with a special introduction from their fellowship mentors. But first, to kick off the evening, please join me in welcoming the incredibly talented former fellowship recipient who now runs the PEN America Emerging Voices Fellowship, Amanda Fletcher.
Thank you, Claudia, and thank you to the entire team at the Hammer for working so tirelessly to produce our virtual 2020 PEN America Emerging Voices final reading. Normally, we would be in Westwood right now, wandering through the annex and waiting for the doors to the Billy Wilder Theater to open. We'd be leafing through our programs, perusing the readers' bios, sipping cocktails, and seeing friends. We'd be hugging people. Remember what that was like? I'm single, I barely do. But let's not lose heart, folks. We will be able to do it again, I am certain of it. Until then, though, I will continue to wear clothes from the back of my closet and be unrestrained by my choice of footwear, or lack thereof. I'm going full Blanche Devereaux in honor of Damien's piece tonight, and also for my friend Julia Callahan, who loves Blanche the best out of all of the Golden Girls. This reading will be published in full on the Emerging Voices Fellowship page at pen.org. And in lieu of a printed program, all bios can be found on our Hammer event page. Closed captioning will be added to the recorded version of this event once we have the capacity to do so. PEN America is a membership organization standing at the intersection of literature and human rights to protect open expression in the US and worldwide. The Emerging Voices Fellowship, or at EV as we call it, is one of PEN's literary programs that has been bringing people together in support of marginalized writers since 1996. It was ahead of its time. 2010 fellow and founder of Makara Center for the Arts, Maritza Rubio, said to me last week. A literary mentorship that continues to provide underrepresented, unknown writers with the skills and connections they need to launch professional careers in the arts. And I say the arts because it's not just about books, though not so humble brag, we do have 65 titles and counting to our names, as well as hundreds of additional awards, publications, and honors. But on top of that, some of our 151 alumni, Kima Jones, Victor Vasquez, Jen Huang, while still writing, are also creating residencies, casting companies, and public relations firms that prioritize the same populations that EV seeks to uplift. Black, Indigenous, people of color, Latinx folks, those who identify with the LGBTQI+ community, women, immigrants, children of immigrants, older folks. In short, we are survivors. And we are the haunted ones, existing in the liminal space of El Olvido, as 2003 fellow Rocio Carlos explained to me when she was a guest on the EV podcast. She then pointed me to the concept of Han. In an essay by Janice Lee, Janice quotes South Korean theologian Su Nam-dong, who describes Han as a feeling of unresolved resentment against injustices suffered, a sense of helplessness because of the overwhelming odds against one, a feeling of acute pain in one's guts and bowels, making the whole body writhe and squirm, and an obstinate urge to take revenge and to right the wrong, all of these things combined. Han. I can't think of a better way to explain why Emerging Voices Fellows feel compelled to write and why our stories are so important. And yet, in a world divided by color and built on the backs of enslaved peoples, it is also the thing that holds us back in the publishing world. We are unknown commodities. We are underpaid and often exploited. We are told that we are a hard sell. We are too dark, too depressing. I call bullshit, because fellowship is defined as a community of interest, activity, feeling, or experience. And there is joy in fellowship, in belonging, in being seen, in community. I know for a fact that people like us are hungry for our stories. Once you've heard Damien, Megan, Shannon, Claire, and Em read, you'll know it too. And while the professional tools the fellowship provides have continued to multiply from year to year, mentorship is still the cornerstone of EV. Fellows are paired with professional authors who provide personalized one-on-one attention and targeted feedback on works in progress. And if you are a writer, you know how vital this is. Imagine finding someone you trust and admire to dedicate themselves to your work. We've asked the mentors to introduce their fellows at this culminating event so that you, the audience, can get a glimpse into this experience. And understanding through personal narrative is the most powerful kind of knowing. I'm so excited for you to see. So without further ado, let me welcome our first mentor, Rachel M. Harper.
Hello, my name is Rachel Harper, and I'm a novelist, the author of most recently This Side of Providence, and I mentored Shannon Gatewood this year. This is a dynamic time to be an American. It is a strange and challenging time to be a person of color in America. And as it's been throughout our history in this country, an unsettling time to be African American. It is also an interesting time to be in the arts. There is a profound responsibility in being an artist, being a writer, because you are called on to translate your own lived and breathed experience into a story for others to contemplate, understand, value, and recognize. And when you are a Black artist, there is often a double burden, or perhaps it is a gift. To be young, gifted, and Black, as Lorraine Hansberry wrote, as Nina Simone sang, a label many of us strive to live up to. Shannon Gatewood is one of these strivers, already living up to the promise of the label. Like Hansberry, Shannon is from Chicago, and she writes of family life in her hometown in much the same way. In her novel, Daughters, Shannon brings the Watson family to life, telling the story of restaurant owner Michael Watson, a pillar of his community, his wife Marianne, and their two adult daughters, Lena and Raina, who work together with their parents to keep their popular soul food restaurant running smoothly. When Michael unexpectedly dies in the beginning of the book, the story shifts to the three women in his life, who now have to come together to bury their patriarch, while also dealing with the surprise reveal that Michael has another daughter, Sophie, the result of an affair he had with a white woman when his daughters were much younger. What happens next is a story that all readers can relate to, as each family member struggles to accept events in the past and present, things they've done and failed to do, things they've said that can't be taken back, and all that remains, perhaps regretfully, unspoken. This is a story about one family's attempt to reconcile a major loss, but it is also about how we try to forgive each other for our faults, how we are forced to endure moments of shame, regret, abandonment, and heartache, often from those we love and trust the most, and how we recover from betrayals by those who are meant to protect us. In writing about these universal themes, Shannon brings her many strengths to bear on each and every page. Her unique and clever phrasing, her gift for exacting dialogue, her biting wit, and her clean, concise prose style. In scenes rich with conflict and tension, her characters emerge as fully realized human beings, people you want to laugh with, cry with, shake, slap, and hug, people you will recognize and admire, in a story that is at once dramatic and devastating, yet full of hope, like America itself. A writer of our times, and very much needed in this time, it is my great pleasure to introduce Shannon Gatewood.
Thank you, Rachel, for all of your kind words and for being my mentor this year. I really appreciate your feedback, your thoughts, and just your general support. This is an excerpt from my novel, Daughters. Friday nights at Mike's were the busiest, which meant all hands on deck. Mary Ann would bustle back and forth between the kitchen and the front counter to make sure orders got out. Her daughters, Lena, who would greet people with an attitude, and Raina, who could balance 2 very full trays without even trying, would man the front end. Their father, Michael, would be seen doing any and everything from flipping burgers with the cooks to bussing tables and soothing crying babies so that restless parents could at least get a chance to eat. This family-owned soul food joint was nestled on the far south side of the city, but would draw people in from all over Chicago, especially on Friday nights. Now, Mike's was closed. It had been closed since the day that Michael Watson passed out right in the middle of delivering a water refill to Mr. Johnson at table 6. The elder, who came in every Tuesday for the catfish special, attempted to catch a falling man, but couldn't move quick enough. No one could. So the man and the pitcher hit the ground hard. Raina dropped the tray she was carrying and ran to her father, almost slipping, while Lena stood frozen at the front counter. She had to be screamed at twice before she moved to call 911. Mary Ann, hearing the commotion, emerged from the back to see her husband on the ground and her daughter listening for a heartbeat while whispering prayers into his chest. Mr. Johnson leaned unsteadily on his cane, yelling at no one in particular to do CPR, with the R lingering longer each time he said it. Even after someone had started the compressions, the man's groans continued until he burst into a coughing fit and had to be led over to a chair to sit down. The paramedics took too long to arrive, and even though she was his wife, they didn't let Mary Ann ride in the ambulance to the hospital. A short time later, she would vaguely pinpoint how she got herself behind the wheel to even get there. She remembered someone, probably one of her daughters, shoving car keys in her hand. She could somewhat recall telling them in a rushed tone to lock up and meet her at the hospital. She paused, thinking of how she must have blown through the stop sign at the end of the block, all in an effort to keep up with the vehicle. In her mind, how closely she trailed the blaring truck had to be a determining factor of if she would lose her husband. Sitting in the waiting room, she couldn't be sure that any of those things happened in that order or at all. The realization that he was in another room dying was enough to disrupt her thoughts and confuse her over and over again. It wasn't just that Michael could be dying. She had lost people close to her. Her mother had a long battle before she died in her 80s, and when it did happen, it was almost expected. The preparation by no means made it easy, but at least she had time to process. At least she saw that coming. She had long ago accepted that they weren't young anymore. She couldn't move like she used to. Aches were regular and medications lived in the bathroom cabinet, but none of those things could warn her that they didn't have more time. It was the sudden nature of it all that she couldn't stomach. Just the night before, he had finally agreed on her paint color for the kitchen. Winter Peach was not an easy sell, but she had worn him down over weeks of paint swatches and pillow talk. On those same pillows, she had convinced him to buy patio furniture for the summer, a playhouse for their grandson, and asked him to trim his coarse beard that he loved to grow out in the fall. "Get rid of this," she said. "It's too rough," running her hands along his cheek. "Look, I just cut my hand. I'm bleeding. Do you want me to bleed?" He appeared to laugh it off, but made sure to leave his clippers on the bathroom sink for the following day. On the morning of his attack, she decided on a new goal, which was to get rid of the shop's yellowing menus. This would be her biggest challenge because he loved them, and at every chance he got, still boasted that they were the originals he had hand-designed over 20 years ago. "They're antique," he would say, looking at one fondly, before taking a stack to customers. She hated those menus and prepared a sound argument to get them reprinted. However, with the new reality of an emergency room, the argument meant nothing. Because if they were awarded even the smallest amount of time, she couldn't waste any more pillow talk on getting him to change. She was over the menus, and her waiting time shifted to figuring out what was the final straw that took him over the edge. She wondered if him trimming his beard for her made him a little sad and added just enough distress to keel him over. Could it have been the Chinese food the night before? He loved to just get one more piece of shrimp. Was it the coffee that he almost always made too strong? The customer that left that morning without tipping? In the midst of this train of thought, her daughters arrived with tear-stained faces to sit on either side of her. If it weren't for the small circles on her back or the gentle grip on her hand, she wouldn't have known they were there. Her mind was too occupied trying to find the exact moment when everything changed. It didn't stop. Not until a nameless person in scrubs emerged from the back, calling out for the Watson family. Her mind continued to sort through every possibility, all the way up until just after she had been delivered the news about her husband. Then, for the first time that day, her mind went blank.
Hi, I'm Charlie Yu, author of 4 books, including my latest, Interior Chinatown, and I'm here to introduce Claire Lin. It's not that difficult, really. You wiggle a little and you're there, in a different crevice of time. You close your eyes to the kid in the mirror and open to a face full of wrinkles. You lie down beside your lover, your cheek brushing against the pillows, and there you are again, 5 years old, hiding, waiting. That's from Treasure Island Alley by Claire Lin. When I read, I listen first for voice. Voice is what draws me in, keeps me turning pages, stays with me after. Your instrument is your instrument. Voice is the sound you've learned to make with it. It's how you play. If the how is original enough, it becomes a new what, a novel way of hearing, an old song made new. When I read Claire Lin's work for the first time, I was struck by her voice, bold and free and assured. In Claire's work, time and space are not obstacles, but conduits, tunnels through which her prose, her eye, her mind move with ease, with speed, touching down lightly on a moment here, a detail there. These moments and details accumulating into constructed worlds that are alive and weird and tactile, full of smells and sounds and particulars. Claire is modest. It was from her husband that I learned of her academic rock star status in Taiwan, where graduating high school seniors take a national entrance exam, ranking every senior. On this test, Claire ranked first, not in her school, in the country. She's brought this formidable intelligence to her writing, and it shows. But more than just having a big brain, what impresses about Claire is her thoughtfulness, which has come through in our conversations, in person, back when in person was still a thing, and more recently through computer screens. Claire speaks carefully. She asks questions, and then more, always trying to learn, to observe, to seek insight. Not just, what should I be thinking about, but also, is this how I should be thinking about it? This self-consciousness, or self-awareness, translates on the page to a sense of restraint. At the same time, Claire's writing can be playful. There is a clear willingness to try new things. I'm not sure how useful I've been to Claire as a mentor, but I have greatly enjoyed our time working together. I hope that Claire has gained confidence in her voice and will continue to make new sounds with it. I'll be listening. It's my pleasure to introduce Claire Lin.
Thank you very much, Charlie. I'm reading the beginning of a short story, Treasure Island Alley. The morning women are howling, their loud cries coming from the big white tent that appeared overnight in the alley. On tiptoe, Shen peers over the windowsill and looks down 3 stories to the long line of people holding incense sticks outside the tent. Each time the morning woman wail, the tent opens its mouth and swallows a person whole. She's in Grandma's bedroom, the smell of old clothes spittoon under the bed. She's in her family's apartment building, 58 Hoping Road, Taipei, Taiwan. Mama made her memorize their address on her 5th birthday a month ago, when Mama and Papa took a rare day off from the family's factory to the zoo, where Mama got so angry that her pregnant belly hurt because Shen strayed from the peacocks and without telling one went searching for the bears. Cupping her fingers around her ears, Shen pretends to scan Grandma's bedroom with a telescope. The target is the top drawer of the dresser by the bed. That's where Grandma hides money. The drawer is 2-3 times her height. She plucks one hair off her pigtail braid and blows it afloat to invoke her favorite of Monkey King's 72 transformations, size enhancement. Then she breathes slow and hard and waits for her legs and arms to grow. Long minutes pass. Nothing. Her hands still only reach the drawer where Grandma keeps a bunch of bras. Shen sighs. She has to watch again how Monkey King does it on TV in her favorite cartoon. But there's no time now. For now, she has to go about it the human way. She swings one leg over the ledge of Grandma's bed, then another, like a frog, like the fat, stubby frog that managed to climb out of the aluminum bowl in the kitchen this morning. But no, Grandma flicked it down with her spatula. Where are you going? The wok's ready. All morning, Grandma has been cooking a feast for the relatives. They're here to pay their respects, they said. Her mama died last night giving birth to a baby. Her sister, they said. Her sister is coming home, but her mama will not, they said. But Shen has her own ideas. She climbs on the mahogany headboard and leans out to pull the dresser's top drawer. Grudgingly, it opens, heavy and squeaky like a pirate's trunk full of treasures, gold earrings, jade bracelets. She ignores them all and zooms in on the red envelope. Inside is a stack of 100 Taiwanese dollar bills. Someone shouts in the stairwell, "Ma, the feng shui master is here." It's Papa. Now Papa and Grandma are talking right outside the bedroom door. Shen grabs the red envelope, jumps off the headboard, and manages to land softly on the comforter. She wiggles between the pillows and tries to disappear. Then she waits and waits. A century passes. She grows old. When she is 15, she will give her virginity to a boy who makes her laugh. At 22, she will move to the United States to study biochemistry. She will settle in Silicon Valley, and for a decade, her startup will be her life. She will marry a white man with a boyish grin and a linebacker's gait. Alex, a venture capitalist. After their divorce, she will become a staunch atheist in search of a religion. At a Silicon Valley meditation boot camp, she will write down everything she knows about her mother, and it will all fit onto one page with room to spare. On the last day of her life, when she is 105, she will lie in her deathbed in the opiate-induced euphoria with her second husband by her side, and she will feel that her life has been lucky despite the sadness that is just beneath the surface of everything. Time escapes from her fingers and hops, skips, jumps. It's not that difficult, really. You wiggle a little and you're there, in a different crevice of time. You close your eyes to the kid in the mirror and open to a face full of wrinkles. You lie down beside your lover, your cheek brushing against the pillow, and there you are again, 5 years old, hiding, waiting. Finally, Shen hears Papa thump down the stairs and Grandma pat back to the kitchen. She puts the red envelope in her Monkey King backpack and opens the bedroom door slit. He rushes in. In the kitchen, Grandma's silhouette shifts in and out of dense smoke. The aromas of 3-cup frogs and twice-cooked pork creep downstairs to their factory and heave upstairs to their roof deck, where they keep a German Shepherd going insane with old age. Just yesterday morning, Mama waddled up to the roof deck while Shen was riding her new pink bike and Grandma was hanging bed sheets out to dry. The dog pawed at Mama, almost tearing her favorite blue dress that clung to her thin frame and swollen belly. Mama handed Grandma the red envelope. "Ma, for this week." Grandma frowned. "How am I supposed to live on this?" Mama rubbed the half-moon shadow under her eyes. "Perhaps you should stop shopping at Japan imports and layaways." "You blame me? The factories broke only after you married my son because you don't know how to manage money." Shen tried to get Mama's attention riding the bike with hands in the air, but Mama was already stumping down the stairs and yelling, "Money, money, go earn your keep at Treasure Island Alley." And Grandma was shouting after Mama, "Treasure Island Alley? How dare you? You are the one who belongs in that hell." Then the dog pounced and Shen flipped over, taking down the clothesline. "Why is Mama so bad?" Shen asked as Grandma pulled her out of the tangle with the bed sheets and the dog. "Good kid," was all Grandma replied, her face still glaring like red-hot coal. Shen thinks Mama must not have wanted to come home because Shen sided with Grandma. On TV, she has watched Monkey King wreak havoc in hell to bring people back to life. If Treasure Island Alley is hell, she will go there to bring Mama back. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Chris L. Terry, and I'm here to introduce Damien Beliveau. One of the most annoying things about being a mixed-race Black dude is having people tell you that you look like somebody else. Blake Griffin, Kid and Play, Counting Crows. Can't I just be me? We're all different people. The catch is, if you encounter another mixed person, you often want to get to know them because you probably have a lot of shared experiences. That happened last year when I was teaching a class for Writing Workshops Los Angeles, and Damien Belliveau walked in. We don't look alike, but if you described him, you might picture me. Pale skin, tattoos, loose curls, 40 plus, but kind of dressed like a skater. Yep. I immediately wanted to read Damien's work, but the class was a seminar on finding an agent, so I just got to hear it described. Damien told the class that his memoir, Hella, is about growing up in the 1990s Bay Area. While his mom was dating an alt-rock one-hit wonder in San Francisco, Damien was living with his grandparents in Daly City and getting to know himself as a Black person at a high school full of strangers. Damien also mentioned that he was applying for PEN America's Emerging Voices Fellowship. I thought, I love PEN. Pause for applause. It would be amazing if Damien got the fellowship and I was his mentor. And well, here we are. I'm pretty sure that I was more excited to get the news about this mentorship than Damien. See, he's already written a hella good book, and he's got more coming. Me, I was finally going to read this memoir that I've been wondering about for months and dig into some of those shared experiences. Damien sent me Hella, and I kept doing the, I'll just read one more chapter thing until it was way past my bedtime. Hella is a terrific read, even if Damien wasn't being honest in my class last year. Sure, Hella is about the 90s Bay Area. I mean, Fogg is practically a character in the book, and a certain Gen X rocker with a funny hat does make an appearance. But Hella is about so much more than that. It's about a high-stakes search for belonging that feels never-ending when you come from a couple of cultures, when your family is slipping between social classes, when your family unit is constantly in flux, when you're vulnerable and alone in a crowd. Best of all, Damien's writing jumps right over that woe is me, tragic mulatto nonsense. It's about finding belonging at any cost, by changing the conversation from your differences to your similarities. Being told that you look like some light-skinned celebrity is annoying. Jussie Smollett? Come on. But those comparisons are also a reminder that you have some kin out there. While celebrities are distant, you can keep a book close to your heart. This year, I'm overjoyed to have read a story that I can carry with me, that expands and enhances my world, and to have worked with Damien to share it. I can't say that I'm proud to introduce Damien because he could have done this without me. I will gladly say that I am excited to introduce Damien though. I'm sure that his work will make you feel like you are part of something too. Here's Damien. Thank you.
I'm Damien Beliveau. I want to thank my mentor, Chris Terry, who just introduced me. And I want to thank all of you for being here this evening and joining me as I read my final reading for the PEN Emerging Voices Fellowship. This is an excerpt from my memoir, Hello, and it takes place in November of 1989. The moment I settled in to watch Golden Girls, the telephone started ringing. I was 13 and hadn't really started answering the phone yet. So the phone rang and rang until Mom picked it up in her room. She said, "Hi, Lulu." And I turned my head and looked across the hall, anticipating the moment she'd call out to me to pick up the phone. I knew that this would happen because my mother only ever called this house in order to speak to me. Lulu lived in San Francisco, but I didn't see her often. She didn't own a car, and she couldn't stand to be in Daly City. Golden Girls had begun. Blanche and Rose walked out of the kitchen and into the living room wearing pastel pantsuits as they waved their hands in exaggerated exasperation. Mom pushed open my door. "Damien," she said, "it's Lulu." I stood beside my bureau and lifted the brown receiver out of its clock radio cradle. "Hi, Mommy," I said. Since we all called my grandmother Mom, Lulu was Mommy. Mom slowly backed away, pulling my bedroom door shut. "Hey, babe," Lulu said. "How you doing?" I told her about Golden Girls, and she laughed. When we'd only exchanged a few sentences, I noticed Mom pushing her way back into my room. She waved at me to come to her. I told Lulu to hold on and set the receiver on my bed. At the door, Mom leaned down. "Damien," she whispered, "ask Lulu why she never brings a date to Christmas or Thanksgiving or anything like Lester's wedding." I was 13 and I'd never known my mother to have a boyfriend. But growing up, I'd always pleaded with her to give me a little brother or a little sister. She promised she would, but never did. So like Mom, I was curious. "But don't tell her I asked," Mom said. "You just ask her like you want to know." I nodded and said, "Okay." Mom retreated, closing the door gently. I walked around my bed, picked up the phone and said, "Hello?" "Babe, what happened?" Lulu asked. "Everything all right?" "Yeah," I said. "It was just Mom." "Okay," Lulu said. Then immediately I asked her, "How come you never bring a date to Christmas or Thanksgiving or anything like Lester's wedding?" For a long moment, I heard nothing but the fuzzy buzz of electrical currents. "Did Mom ask you to ask me that?" "No," I lied. "You just thought of that?" "Yeah." "Well," Lulu started, "I don't really like boys right now." "Okay," I said. At 13 years old, I understood not liking the opposite sex. "I mean, I don't like boys right now," she said, "which doesn't mean I won't ever like boys. It just means right now, I don't like boys." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Well," Lulu said, "I guess it means I like girls." All at once, I understood what my mother was telling me. A shudder ripped through my body. This was 1989, not today, not 2020. And the idea that my mother was gay was so far outside the norm that I was mentally and physically unable to process what she'd said to me. The phone slid out of my hand and fell to the ground. My eyes blinked about 1,000,000 times, filling with water. A single tear broke free at the corner of my eye, rolled down my cheek and slipped off my chin. Moments passed, and as the throbbing in my head slowed and quieted, I heard a screeching, screaming noise. I looked down at my feet. The phone was lying there, dangling from the brown cord like a noose. I picked up the receiver, and from some dark, guttural place, I uttered, "Hello?" "Damien," Lulu was screaming. "Damien," she shouted. "Damien, are you there? Are you okay? Are you all right?" "Yeah," I sighed. "I'll be right over." Our connection clicked off. I placed the receiver back in the cradle. Sitting on my bed, clutching my knees to my chest, I faced the television. Blanche and Rose and Dorothy and Sophia argued in the kitchen about Blanche's trashiness and Rose's dimness and Dorothy's crabbiness and Sophia's oldness. I felt pressure inside of me and outside of me and within each breath I took. Mom knocked on the door and popped her head through the opening and asked, "So what did she," and then she saw me and shrieked, "Bev!" She cried, "What happened?" Mom grabbed me and tried to hug me, but she may as well have been hugging a corpse. "What did she say, Bev? What did she say?" I shook my head, not wanting to talk if I could. Mom spun away, slamming the door behind her. Soon, the force of someone mounting our staircase rattled the entire house. I heard the front door open and close. There was a commotion in the hallway. Mom and Lulu were yelling at each other, but quietly. They were hushing at each other, which was somehow more upsetting because I knew they were trying to hide this violence from me. I couldn't see through the wall, but I knew Lulu pushed her way past because suddenly she was in my room. Lulu crawled onto my bed, wrapped her arms around me. Our tears joined, slick between our cheeks. Our sobs found a common rhythm. We rocked back and forth, holding each other like we were holding on for our lives. And at this moment, I hated her. I hated this woman, my mother, because she was here and Golden Girls was still on. Since Lulu's return to San Francisco, anytime I told her I wanted to see her more often, she'd always produce some excuse. "It's too far," she would say. "Work is crazy," she would say. She didn't have a car, she would say. It was this and it was that, and it was everything except the truth. Because when she wanted to be there, when she needed to be there, when she absolutely had to get here because she felt pain and she was scared, then she was able to be here in 15 minutes. Lulu held on to me and I accepted the hug. I loved the embrace while hating her because more than anything else in this world, love was what I wanted from my mommy. We didn't talk that night. We held each other, then we slept. Waking up the next morning, Lulu was still there beside me. Our day was beginning together for the first time and longer than I could remember. Lulu stirred, then woke, then immediately grabbed me and hugged me. She kissed my puffy, salt-smeared eyes. Lulu peeled herself away from me. She left the room, and when she returned, her face was clean, her hair was wet, she was dressed. She gathered her things. "I had to take my friend's car back now," she said. Over the pile of blankets, I nodded and watched as she closed the door behind her. I let my head sink into the pillow, my eyes dry and open. I couldn't cry any longer. I was empty. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Angélica Villarreal. I'm the author of Beast Meridian, and I had the pleasure of mentoring poet Megan Dorame. In America, some of us are born to ghosts. Any attempt to know where we come from, our people, our culture, our ancestral tribe, leads to dead ends, corrupted records, absences in the historical record that foreclose any knowledge or reconnection to our past. We are estranged from our elders and keepers of memory, sometimes by borders, sometimes by time, violence, or language, and sometimes because they have left us too early and taken their memories with them. So in the absence of historical record, of collective memory, of witness, what can the land give us? What memory of us still lives in the earth? Colonized people are haunted people, and to write is to contend with an absence that threatens to disappear us into its forgetting. Our existence is the result of unknown and non-consensual violences erased from the official state record, but carried in the body. a knowing that manifests as a kind of dislocated sadness, a longing for a piece of self that speaks sometimes through the land, sometimes through the tenderness with which we regard others, sometimes through ourselves. This has been the central question of my newest work, a question made all the more urgent upon arriving to Los Angeles, a city currently occupying Tongva land. I came here to study at the University of Southern California to write a book about my grandmother, a survivor of intimate, colonial, and medical violence, and the pattern repetitions along my maternal line of abusive marriages, motherhood, daughterhood, one line in which our family's indigeneity feels close. But upon arriving here, I was struck by the daily violence against the poor in Los Angeles, against Black, Indigenous, Latinx, and immigrant communities experiencing ongoing colonization in the form of displacement, gentrification, immigration, and police violence, climate change. The city beckoned me to listen to it deeply, to take something in of all this darkness. Little did I know that this would be shared labor. It wasn't until I met Megan Dorame that I learned to practice communion with the land, to listen deeply to it and see the land itself as its own language, as an historical and manipulated entity that grieves and acts and resists. Where I saw land as a record, a counterpublic, a space of ancestral memory, Megan recognized this and showed me how she engaged with the land like family, her poetic language shaping itself around its rhythms and hymns and thrums of life, a perspective that plunged into the long memory of the earth and remembered underwater orchards of abalone, braiding rivers, echoes of language, the porous boundary between self, others, and land. But this is not to say that her work is in any way romanticizing or representing Indigenous perspectives. Rather, her poems, like her work as a Tongva language restorer or as an Indigenous consultant who oversees development projects and protects forgotten grave sites, artifacts, and monuments that are daily threatened with erasure and disappearance, her poems do a deeper affective labor of recording the forgetting, marking the erasures, making sacred the imperfect remembering, only possible through poems. I am stunned with the forms remembering creates in her pages, the precision with which she renders memory as tenderness, as body, as land, as loss. The act of writing is communion with the land, and its language is a powerful project of reparation. So I leave you with a small Tongva phrase I learned from Megan's work that I say to myself when I'm feeling that profound sadness. Weshar, Shavot, oak, light, and I feel something like hope, like I cannot wait to see the world my friend, teacher, and sister, Megan Dorame, will make for us.
Thank you, Vanessa, for being my mentor. So this is a long poem, and because of time, I'll have to skip over a few sections. What blood is the salinity of salt water? Salinity, salted earth. What currents the veins is soil, soiled. Soil dissolved in sea is a tired drowning. The blood tug, the tangled root of dispossession sinks. The anchor a ghost mass, the sum of theft. This Hollywood homeland glistens as a shell shelled. What shell will thrive in waters colonized warm? The tide licks the shore, the shoring longs for morning. The morning reflects in wombs like mine that are salted. Salinity, dream time, blood. What is sown in blood bound by conquest? The white walls of the mission are no place to be or birth. The one window is a tea of pine pitch. The thirst calls cells to safety. Cells remember past foothills. The feet bolt. What falls between the legs is salt water. Salinity, abalone as amulet. String through breath holes strung on the porch as streamers of protection. Shells clack, singing away spirits who seek the hollow in us all. Salinity, inherited drown amid another apocalypse. What future exists where concrete river mouths speak only in dust? What future exists where the Pacific rises tepid, the absence of fragments abound, the final acorn ground, the final abalone plucked, suckled? What future exists where auburn skies tell of fires made to hop freeways? We mask ourselves from smoke. The virus spreads, rapid, rabid, biting the same soft pearls that ate my grandmother's lungs. What futures exist where we progress despite our withering feet? What futures exist where a baby is buoyed by salt water? Salinity, history repeats. Fisher my pelvis with a tender knife. Shuck the unborn from shell. The precision of wrist digs, exposing a home for little feet. Souls the size of dewdrops. Prolific pulses plunge. A rhythmic descent from body of soil to tide grave. Salinity, abalone as reflection. Look into my shucked shell, see the past or future. Memory transports vision through space and time to reanimate the sacred. Salinity, abalone as body. Shapeshifter, shored. The spine unfurls into the shell of a red abalone. The apex, a shoulder blade, a display of strength. The fascia, calcified, counterfeit. The most prominent strata, a garnet scar. The indelible blot of bloodline dropped. Desire bisected by the gristle split of cervix. Salinity portal. Neuron channels unravel shame's face into sandstone striations. It is time and wind that weathers the stone soft. To lurch from such a lesion, the larva frees from the decay it cleaves to root in the false ribs. Breath lifts there. The breadth of comet tail orbits the spiral patina of possibility. Salinity, possibility. An entrance, an aura flare in the right eye, a tumble toward rocky shores rerouted by updraft, recalibration to cliffed coastline, the feet land with vision expanded into alternative fields of poppies. salinity, repair. Gilded centers spread paper white, garland of roe cracked into cast iron. With no glow of yolk, the belly waits, the water breaks. Swallow the memory clot to dissolve the nausea with the tide. The light seek is a dive to unstitch the pearl from the throat. To speak is to suture the bleed. What hides in the shadow of the teeth endeavors to be released.
Hi, I'm Antonia Crane. I'm an author and activist in Los Angeles, and it's been my absolute delight and pleasure to mentor Kiguwa. And it's also my pleasure to work with Penn, who is incredible. The work that they do is just absolutely vital to our survival. And thank you, Amanda Fletcher. You're the best. You make it all happen. And your patience, I really appreciate you. And love and toast to Michelle Frankie also, and all of the writers tonight. Cheers. It's a pistachio passion fruit drink. It's a little strange. MK was the last person that I met at a cafe before COVID-19 shut everything down. I drank unsweetened coconut iced tea and sucked up her lavish opening chapters from a glowing screen. She glistened in an elegant black pantsuit. She looked like she had a hot date later, so I teased her about it, and she told me she didn't. But she also said she's a bullshitter, and I believe her. According to ancient scribes, there's a Babylonian myth about a wily, brackish sea goddess, Tiamat, who has the audacity to defend her loud kids when they piss off Apsu, the male god of storms. Agitated about Tiamat's ability to create life and have compassion at the same time, a war ensues where Tiamat is sliced open, her fluids tossed into the sky to create the cosmos. Such is the seductive lore of patriarchy, the telling and retelling of a salty battle of male dominance, ending in the massacre of the divine feminine. Jesus, Zeus, Gamut, and Apsu all get law, order, and a blowjob while twisting a creation story to suppress women's voices and drown out the fact of birth with fists and lies that hammer the ancient caves of our maternal hearts. M. Kiguwa's memoir tells another tale. From the guts of a woman's pain, a world is born. Her lyricism explodes form on every page, daring the reader to penetrate her creation story, an unstable political and personal landscape that is at once gorgeous and impossible to fathom. It can be felt, and it can be beckoned like a serpent in a black sea, and yet it is in this unrecognizable space where MK is startlingly clear. From the get, patriarchy reigns. Her grandfather may reject her cursed conception, but she spins a web inside his toasted pecan-colored skin and loves and loves and loves him. At least her memory tells her this, in spite of his shame, Christianity, prayer, and the intricacies of hypocrisy, which MK knows like the dusty seeds of maize. Upon reading section of MK's work, I recognized an untamed sorceress of the sea in her prose. After all, Here Comes the Matriarchy swims from Uganda to South London to Ratland, Massachusetts, and like all sea goddesses, her senses transgress the material world, yet she never softens her focus. Corpses steam, daughters and sons get raped by soldiers, and everyone wears flip-flops. MK's poetic lyricism contains its own feminist math magic. She speaks in tongues. 1 minute, she is Ugandan poetry, gospel chorus, and famine, and the next, She's swiping cocaine boys on dating apps and betraying her benefactor. Impressed by her knife-wielding aunt, she writes, "Anyway, we are all mad." Indeed, we are. In her travels from sex to God and back again, she never forgets that we come from a long line of witchy healing women, sex workers, dragon mothers, and sugar babies, women with rivers flashing in our eyes, and that women like us are not meant to survive. And yet, here we are. And from the raging waters of her skin story, the matriarch booms. And here is the incredible writer, otherwise known as MK.
Thank you so much for those beautiful, heartfelt words. It has been so inspiring and beautiful to be your mentee. And the piece I'm about to read is really inspired by your prodding me to be more honest, more truthful, and more raw. We agreed on $3,000 a month, lump sum. But just so we wouldn't have to discuss it again, we hammered out the terms during dinner. On the first of every month, he'd send my allowance through PayPal because that'd be easiest for him to remember. But as he casually mentioned during our date, he didn't want to be bound by rigid rules around the whole thing. He was saying what he didn't want to say, that when he felt led by the Spirit, he wanted to be able to spoil me freely, that the $3,000 was just where things started, but certainly was not the ceiling of his affection. By the time I got my first job as an executive assistant to a prominent showrunner in Hollywood, he'd already sent the first payment through PayPal. When I told him about the new job, I woke up the next morning to an e-gift card for $1,000 from the Four Seasons Spa. Well done and congratulations. Thank you for making my gray life less dreary, was written in the email. Our dates were no less glamorous. A yacht chartered so I could see dolphins up close. While spending our day cuddling on the boat, I read him nascent poems from a collection I still have yet to finish. He read me his mentor's poetry, the words piercing and visceral. Another night, we went to one of LA's popular restaurants. With celebrities and athletes buzzing about us, he ordered the entirety of the menu so I could sample it all. Afterwards, I told him everything about me. The even days in Rutland, living with a stepfather who hated the sight and sound of me. The odd days in London, staring at train tracks, wondering how long it'd take to clean brain matter from the front of the train if I jumped in front of it. He showed me his dark spaces too. A cruel, abusive father who hit with words and fists. A mentally unstable mother who tried to kill him multiple times as a child. We unraveled ourselves, the both of us revealing underbelly soft to touch, vulnerable and tender. We were never supposed to survive, and that we'd found each other, that somehow, despite it all, we wanted to consider each other first. That too was never supposed to be our story. After our dates, he'd kiss my cheek and slip an envelope into my purse. I'd count the money in the Uber home. Always $1,000, his promise that I'd be well taken care of, that his care was a waterfall, the meat falling out of the broken husk of a coconut, a river flowing towards me. Sure, I'd dated rich before, but never anyone this generous. Between my allowance, cash gifts, dinners, and lavish dates, I knew he was spending upwards of $7,000 or $8,000 on me monthly. It startled me, this generosity, but even in theory, even before I'd met him, even before moving to Los Angeles, I knew about the power of creatrix, specifically about the Betty women of Benin, those healing women who dragged themselves up a mountain and through a black ocean, there tied a bridge between calamity and peace. I don't remember how I'd learned about them. I was probably reading something obscure titled Pre-Colonial Sexuality in Africa. But from wherever I'd learned about them, I'd also learned that theirs was a secret council of wise women who gathered at night during the harshest of times when stakes ran high. It is said the way secrets are said, that when rain refused to fall and famine kissed fledgling seeds of maize into dust, these women of mystery saw how people wailed into dry riverbeds and how people wailed into empty granaries. And when enough was enough was enough, they decided to pray. On a full moon, they'd climb together, slowly, steadily, up a mountain as dark as their breath, and upon reaching the top, would lie down in a circle with their feet inward, their heads exposed. They would chant and they would sing, and when it was time, they would pull up their dresses and skirts and touch themselves. Softly at first, but then harder and in rhythm. And as they writhed, they moaned, and as they moaned, they sighed, and well, with wave upon wave of orgasm, together, in communion, they leveraged the power of their wetness, asking the universe, please, please take our offering. Theirs was not from ashes to ashes, dust to dust, but from water to water, life to life. Mine too pulled the tide, and I happily would have given of my body. But my sweet benefactor was happy to court me in the traditional sense. Always a kiss on the cheek at the end of the night, always respectful, always chivalrous. I wanted to share myself with him the way I'd share my body with random people over the years. From the sex parties I threw in my apartment to the people I'd messaged on Craigslist. From the guy 2 days released from prison to the mother who made her kids sit outside the house while we finished, and the hedge fund guy with his loft in the middle of West London. To these people I'd asked after, doesn't it get tiring? Do you ever get lonely? The convict responded, don't be on no bullshit. The mother, sometimes, maybe you could hook me up with a guy you know? The financier, I mean, it's not as bad as the younger guys. So much money, cocaine, new Ferraris, fucking women every night. I'm not that, at least. But yeah, it gets lonely. I could have said many words to these three, or the countless others, but only to the one who survived things much worse than I did I admit cities are lonely. And even us who know the sweetness of living in the shadows, the birthing pains of art labored in anonymity, even we want to open our arms wide in the street, to be seen by both sun and moon, to be as those wise Betty women, recognized and embraced by the elements. We are light, I wanted to tell him, but we are also sweltering and willful, weathered and cosmic, pulsating and raw. We are perverts and holy, oaks and their roots. We are a river flowing, worlds entire, wounded magicians calling into the dead of night, please, please, take our offering. I never got to tell him these words. I only got his long email detailing the ways he knew I was trying to find other men like him. Through dating apps, through friends of friends. But I knew he was also on dating apps, and so I wondered while reading, wasn't he also trying to find other women like me? Monogamy is a funny thing, and men are comedians. Still, I tried to remedy the rift, pretend I could be a good girl, exclusive, kept. But we both knew a wild thing when we saw it. He ended things 4 months later. He said he had tax issues, that the movie he thought he'd be writing and directing fell through, that something cash flow had dwindled. I wanted to believe him, but I knew the real reason was he felt betrayed. Me being me, I asked for a severance gift. One last PayPal notification for old time's sake. $3,000 for the road. He sent it, and our rendezvous ended as quickly as it began. And how he found me is how he left me, thirsty and insatiable, walking in the dead of night, calling like those women from whom all wise women hail, to the blackness of the sky, calling, please, please, take my offering, and waiting patiently for it to rain.
you so much. Thank you to all the readers. Thank you all for joining us. In normal celebratory times, now is when I would tell you that our application period for 2021 is open and that you should apply. But unfortunately, we know these are not normal times. Given that the fellowship has traditionally taken place in person in Los Angeles, the 2021 application has not opened. PEN America, much like many other arts organizations, is assessing the impact of the pandemic on all of our programming in order to determine what offerings will be possible going forward. We plan to share a more substantive update on the future of EV in August, so please follow our Facebook and Twitter pages if you're not already. And if you have questions, please reach out to Michelle Frankie, who is our executive director here in Los Angeles. Her email is mfrankie@pen.org. So again, so amazing. Thank you. Special thanks to Vanessa, Charlie, Chris, Rachel, and Antonia for their mentorship, and to Megan, Claire, Damien, Shannon, and Em. The world as we knew it collapsed during your tenure as EVs. And even though we are all continuing to ride epic waves of uncertainty, up, down, side to side, you handled the pivot into the virtual space with determination and grace. Not just for this reading, but for your author evenings, master classes, and professional workshops. No one threw up their hands and said, fuck it. Not for the whole time anyway. I'm sure we all had some of those moments. And that reaction would have been most understandable. I only wish that I was able to spend more time with each of you, and I look forward to doing so in person in the future with hugging. I am in awe of the people you are and the ways in which you show up in the world, and I thank each and every one of you for letting me stand in your orbit. Finally, I'd like to acknowledge that the Emerging Voices Fellowship is generously supported by the California Arts Council, New Balloon and Catapult, Los Angeles County Department of Arts and Culture, Pasadena Literary Alliance, UCLA Extension Writers Program, the Rosenthal Family Foundation, Jamie Wolf, and in part by a grant from the City of Los Angeles Department of Cultural Affairs. And a special thanks to Robbie Pollock for freestyling our 2020 Emerging Voices song. May we never stop telling our stories, no matter what happens. That's it for me, y'all. Have a great night.